Paul Ferriss, you're the editorial director at Strategic Content Labs. You're also an author, Never Too Fast, the Paul Tracy story, and you are also one hell of a guy. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Fact Up podcast, good sir.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Thanks for having me.
What have you been doing to find your zen over the past few weeks? I'm curious.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I've actually found it yet. I think the biggest thing has been just kind of adjusting. I mean, haven't really worked from home that often on a regular basis, for one thing. And now, my wife, myself, my daughter are all here working from home. My daughter's in grade 10, so she's been, doing the online school stuff. So it's been an adjustment for sure. So I think it's just kind of trying to adjust to that, but then at the same time, it is kind of hard to get perspective too, like to kind of take a step back, because this is kind of a constant thing and things keep changing, and we don't know where it's all going, how long this is going to last. And we always end up with talking to colleagues and members of the team. It's like, how long is this going to last? We don't know. We always have there's many more questions than answers. So it's kind of like, you just kind of try to adjust, and then, kind of take a deep breath when you can. We're lucky, the weather's just turned fairly nice again, or pretty nice. It's, we're in the midst of a heat warning here, so it's good to be able to just go out in the backyard and kind of, instead of that instinct is go out and go somewhere, now it's more like just go to the backyard and kind of just,
right.
To kind of chill and kind of decompress a bit that way.
Right. I've heard the term backyard Vallarta. I've heard many terms. A lot of people have gotten very, very creative.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But for those who don't know, what does the editorial director at Strategic Content Labs mean? What do you do, and what is the company all about?
Well, we're part of St. Joseph Media and St. Joseph Communications, a larger company. So they have printing, they have media division, which includes Toronto Life, and now what used to be the Rogers titles, so Maclean's and Canadian Business, and Chatelaine. There's several of those media properties. We're on the custom content side. So we were the group I lead, which is just to make it a longer title, Strategic Content Labs Travel and Automotive Division. Mm-hmm. So we're one of the custom content groups. SCL had a custom content division. They brought us in. We were formerly known as Totem. We were bought a couple years ago. So our primary clients are CAA. So we do CAA Magazine, and I've been working on CAA East, so 4 clubs, 3 in Ontario and the Atlantic region. Mm-hmm. SCL had the contract to publish the 3 of the Western magazines, so Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. So there's two separate, but working fairly close together teams there on CAA. So my job is to kind of, be the kind of a bit of a traffic cop, the director of all things, supervisor. I do some editing, lead the teams, manage the teams, deal with our clients across each of the CAA clubs. We also do some work with Acura in the US. We do a magazine, some content work for them. We've got a few other smaller projects. We've done some work for Manulife, a group of other content. So we do a lot of custom work in partnership with our media sales team too. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do.
Do you feel more so overwhelmed because of the different types of companies that you work with based on maybe individual timelines that each of them have? For example, CAA might have a different timeline to incorporate more strategies based on the evolution of the coronavirus and kind of the flattening of the curve, as opposed to maybe an Acura, or mm-hmm. maybe are you overwhelmed more so than your typical director based on the different types of companies that you work with?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say necessarily overwhelmed, but there's certainly, we went through, as this was all starting. I mean, I think it was early to mid-March, we all started working from home. So we were in the midst of our summer issues on CAA, so across all the clubs. So that became, trying to answer, sorry, you might hear the dog barking in the background. Working from home, there you go. Right. That meant a lot of changes we had to make on the fly, and working very closely with each of the CAA clubs, because again, it was back to the more questions than answers. We don't know where all this is going. We had some content that was timely that we knew we had to adjust for sure. Some stuff we had to remove altogether. So it was really, it was kind of an all hands on deck, but also all hands on deck remotely. And that was including our CA clients, plus the editorial teams all coming together and just trying to figure it out. And it was really for a couple of weeks, it was day to day making those changes. So it started to feel like you were just in a race against time and
Right.
trying to get things done. But the good thing is we were all in it together. The clients were working, and they had the same questions we had. So trying to figure out, there's some obvious things. If there were events planned that they knew couldn't happen, we had to remove that reference from the book altogether. If there were things that maybe could happen, we could kind of recast them. Working with Acura was a slightly different kind of pressure, because we were working on a content program for their dealers. Most of the automotive dealers ended up closing. So the magazine we had in progress had to kind of come to a screeching halt, and then we had to figure out where we're going to go next. So, our client in that sense, they were all, just, again, it was the same thing, all hands on deck, let's figure this out. And it just became let's just, sorry for the automotive reference, put the brakes on this and we'll hold and we'll see where it goes from here.
Right.
So that's what we had to do.
How does this change and influence, the collaborative process now when it comes to content? Because stories are obviously the a huge part of what you're involved with.
Yeah.
How does that change now going forward as far as the type of content that you're looking for and that's produced going down the road?
You mean the types of content?
It's a loaded question. Yeah.
I mean, how it changes the types of content, or the way we work to produce that content, or both?
A little bit of both. You can't. I mean, from what I've been doing over the past little while is it's really, I don't find it to be right to start promoting. Let's say, here's my latest trip from Berlin from last year,
right.
Yeah. when no one can really leave outside of Canada or even Ontario or Quebec.
Yeah.
So are you looking more now, how does the collaborative process work to produce content, and what kind of content are you kind of more focused on 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the road? I ask loaded questions for a reason.
No, it's a good one. There's a lot there. I think 6 months down the road, I mean, we're working on for CA for the actually all the clubs are now working on the fall issues. So as well as anyway, those long lead times for this stuff. So it is a bit of guesswork, but in terms of the next our next milestone of getting the fall magazines out, it's again, like you said, judging those, trying to gauge where people, how much they want to read about things where they can't necessarily travel to, but also kind of taking a bit of step back and saying, here's where we've come, here's what's happened, here's where we're going to go next, and kind of take a look at how travel may change and things like that, and to kind of try to take a little farther down the road. And I think for all CAA, the clients we worked with, they're some of the content they want to do is oriented towards their members, saying, thanks for helping us out. Thanks for sticking with us. Here's what we've done. Here's what we've done during this crisis. Here's some of the stuff that members have done, and kind of just taking a bit of a step back and a breather that way. So it helps to kind of not just buy us a little time, but also to kind of assess where we're at and where we might go from here. Speaking to some of the travel writers, and you've spoken to a bunch as well, that it's like, yeah, everyone's grounded right now. No one's really going anywhere, and it's like where do we go from here is the open question. What I think, there's people still have an interest in traveling. It's just when can they go? What will that look like? How will they get there? Where will they go? Will they stay in Canada for the next while, even if the travel restrictions lift and the border opens? Hard to say.
But again, stories are huge. Is there a story that you've personally come across over the past few weeks that has inspired you, be it, an act of kindness or, dolphins in the Venetian Canal, for example?
Yeah, those kinds of stories about those ones kind of definitely give you pause. That story about the Venice canals that are certainly looking a lot cleaner than they used to, like those kinds of silver linings that you see everywhere. And even just around home here, you start to notice things you didn't notice before. And I was saying to my wife and daughter, it's like there's fewer planes flying overhead. Not that we were in any kind of high traffic zone, but there is certainly less traffic that way. And you start to hear things that you might not have heard before. There's, it kind of sounds kind of silly, but you hear the birds more often. That kind
Right.
of stuff. There's less noise, less travel, less movement. So I don't think there's one particular story or not, but there's a collection of those things to make it go, oh, okay. Like you were saying, it's like, it's a good break from the news and all the doom and gloom sometimes. And we've had a couple stories come across and some pitches from people that have sent us some interesting things that they've experienced and kind of on the cusp of things as they were, traveling, and then they had to scale back, and just how people responded and the kindness that they felt. So there's certainly some good news out there. There's a lot of negative stuff, particularly you were just mentioning flying, and reading some stuff about people who have been on planes the past few weeks, and it's been like, oh man, it's a whole different experience right now.
Right.
Mostly because everyone's stressed about going anywhere on a plane and being stuck so close to other people. So
Right.
you have to kind of balance that good with the bad.
Layoffs are a huge story maker. Layoffs, at every turn. Companies like Hertz, for example, we're talking about CAA,
Yeah.
and cars filing for bankruptcy recently. Um, in your gut feeling, how much worse is this going to get in the travel industry before it gets better? When do we turn a corner collectively? And does the desire to travel beyond the borders make a return with as much passion as it did before? In your gut, what are you feeling?
I think there's a hardcore group of people who want to travel and are prepared to accept all manner of risks, whether they're kind of viral or being that close to people. I think there's people who are just waiting to go, and they're going to be prepared. They're going to adjust to this so-called new normal of having to, sanitize, greater inspections at the airport, longer lines, wearing masks on planes, all that kind of stuff. I think there's still a group of people who will just say, yep, you know what, that's the price I have to pay. I want to get to this place. I can do that thing. I think what's just the stuff I've been reading now, I think companies have to adjust pretty quickly. Hotel chains, for example, obviously airports, I was reading about Marriott hotels on the weekend, how they're going to adjust more quickly than they have. I mean, mobile check-ins, things where you can be contactless. You go to a hotel and you stay there. You don't have to deal with necessarily any people anymore on a regular basis. You don't have to get that close. I think they're going to have to adjust pretty quickly. Airlines too, but airlines it's a tough business to be in. It's expensive to run airlines, it's expensive to maintain aircraft, and if you have fewer people on them, the prices are going to go up. So that's, I think, the big thing for people if they're going to travel outside the country, if they're going to fly anywhere. I think road trips, particularly during the summer and into the fall, will certainly be a bigger thing. But that kind of assumes that your destination is going to be, you're going to be able to maintain some distance when you get there. If we're still going through this, if you're going to be allowed to drive, say, from Toronto to up north somewhere to a remote location, you're going to stay overnight in a lodge or a motel. Well, that's great, but you still got to be in contact with people. You still have to be able to, they have to be able to adjust to you, and you have to be able to adjust to them. Are park services going to be open? Can you use the washroom? Should you use the washroom if you stop at a rest stop? Those kinds of things. I think it's going to be a slow process. I think, especially because I don't think anybody's going to open the floodgates anytime soon to say, okay, go. I think the province and the government's taking a very cautious approach, which I think they should, because you still hear talk about the second wave of this. It could happen in the fall. Nobody wants to go through that. And yet, we have to kind of adjust to this reality we're in now before we can deal with that. So I think every single company is going through some sort of look at, do we have to lay people off? Do we have to adjust work hours to make things easier for people to work from home? What are the costs of all those things? I think every company is trying to do that. Meanwhile, doing the work they're supposed to be doing.
There is so much anxiety about traveling and getting on a plane, a train, even a bus, public transit even. Is the staycation, here to stay for a while? Traveling by car, I know gas prices have gone back up since the whole thing began. But is the road trip that classic get in the car and the station wagon even and driving somewhere, the staycation with the family, is that here to stay for the next year, 2 years, 3 years? And if so, what are some destinations that have been otherwise overlooked by people who have gone abroad over the past few years and have kind of neglected their own backyard?
I think the first part, yeah, I think road trips are definitely. I think they never really went away. I mean, they certainly got overlooked. I think it kind of became a little bit unfashionable. People were concerned about the environment. Should you be driving everywhere? But I think the need for people to get out and see their surroundings, see the countryside, see something other than what they're been looking at for the past few months is still strong. So I think yeah, road trips will definitely make a comeback. Um, I always look at it from probably a Toronto centric perspective, but yeah, if we're going to go somewhere, I mean, if you can, north is the place to go, east into, PEI, Nova Scotia, even Quebec, just to get a different taste of the world. I think there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of smaller places that people aren't necessarily know, but it's not necessarily the big capitals you have to go to. You don't have to go to Ottawa or Montreal. There's all the little places in between, and in and around those areas that I think they're certainly easy to get to. Again, I think the kicker is going to be, are those places ready for people? Are those protocols in place? Are those smaller little destinations, do they have the money to invest in those kinds of protocols that they need to do to invite more people in, to keep people distant, keep them safe, but I think the idea of even day trips, I think, staycations and day trips, I think are certainly going to become, more prevalent throughout the summer and into the fall.
Music and road trips, Paul
Yeah.
Ferriss. What's on your playlist while you're on the road?
um, Probably too much Bruce Springsteen stuff for my family to absorb,
Right,
but that's my go-to.
right.
Um, I listen to a lot of, um, I guess it's called Americana stuff. A
Okay.
guy named Hayes Carl and Jason Isbell, and a friend of mine and I are big fans of Drive-By Truckers. They're guys from the South in the U.S. So that's another thing. Both of us, he and I, have been lamenting the fact that we've gone to a bunch of concerts at smaller places. The Horseshoe here in Toronto, we've gone a bunch of times. Can't do that anymore, like right now, and we'll see what that looks like in the next little while. But yeah, bands like the Hold Steady, all those guys are big. And then it depends on what my wife and daughter want to hear too, and the competing iPods and competing playlists.
Right.
Yeah.
Snacks. What are you packing for every road trip? Three must snack packs. Pack
Hmm.
snacks for every
Well,
road trip.
every road trip. Well, see, typically the road trip involves the dog too, so we have to bring some water
Right.
for sure. I would gravitate towards granola bars, things like that. But then I complain that the crumbs go everywhere, and I'm trying to eat and stuff. And I have to clean the car out because I'm a neat freak about that stuff. So,
Right.
um, what else is on there? Usually some fruit, stuff that's going to keep you alert and stuff that's not going to melt. It's easy to eat while you're driving. That kind of
Right.
stuff.
You take the
Apple,
healthier route. Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
I was
Why?
going like towards the Doritos, Ringos, Snicker bites.
Yeah. See, the Doritos are
Good.
good, but then you get the orange stuff on your hands and you get them all the steering wheel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I can understand that. I totally respect that. Uh,
Like Dairy Queen milkshakes, those are a go-to as well.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a must stop for sure. There's a lot of little ice cream shops in and around. I mean, we're talking about Toronto centric.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only speak of Toronto centric because these are the little small kind of ice cream shops that I know outside of the city. And you were talking about day trips. There was an article I wrote recently about the 10, family-owned dairy farms that are a day away from Toronto, if that.
Yeah.
And you're supporting the little guy, and you're getting your summer on, and it's great for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's my sister and brother-in-law have a farm outside of Brantford, so near Scotland, Ontario. But they're some of the stuff they grow, they're hoping to be able to sell at some of the markets around there. But it's kind of an open question if some of those markets are going to be able to be open. But that's a
Right.
big draw for a lot of people, just to go like a day trip, to some of those local markets, and even like the fruit stands and stuff like that you find on the road. So um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so hopefully that stuff will still be something you can take part in.
Fruit stands and chip trucks and ice cream dairy bars. That's
Yeah,
that's summer to me, man.
yeah, for sure.
Um,
I hear you.
Long haul flight. Let's talk about like Vancouver to Auckland, Toronto, Tokyo. Dead or alive, three people that you'd love to sit next to during a long haul flight. I love this question, by the way.
I should have got your list of questions before this, so I were prepared. Um,
I know it's a tricky question. It's a tricky question, but take your
three,
time.
three people did. Well, I would put Springsteen on that list.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if he flies commercial ever.
In a perfect world, you're sitting next to him, right?
Yeah, we'd be in, well, then we'd be in first class probably
Right,
too, business class. So that's good.
right,
So we'd have a bit of distance too. So he'd be okay.
right.
Oh, Mario Andretti. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. I think he's a guy he likes to talk from what I've
Right,
seen.
right.
And he's got a lot of stories to tell from a long career. So I think he'd be a pretty cool guy to sit next to. Looking over here at the shelves, who is anybody that pops out? I don't know. Do you have three for sure that come to mind?
The first one that came to my mind was Robin Williams.
Ah, yes.
Robin Williams, I find would be you'd learn life lessons, you would learn perspectives that you never even imagined, and you would probably lose 10 pounds from laughing, right? So you
Yeah.
get that you get that perspective, you'd get that humility,
Hmm.
you'd get that real introspective of what made him tick, but at the same time you'd laugh, right? So
Yeah.
you'd really get to know the man as opposed to
Yeah.
the character,
Yeah.
right?
I think you would probably have trouble getting a word in edgewise too. Just when you ever see him in an interview and he would just go and
Ugh,
it's half an hour goes by and no one else has said a word, but they're all like collapsed on the floor laughing.
it's genius.
Yeah.
It's genius.
Yeah.
I have a final question for you.
Okay.
You've traveled. You're an extensive traveler, and you are also a family man. But in your day of travel, and your days of travel will continue, obviously. Is there one place that speaks to your soul? Where do you feel your soul lives? Where you've been and you've just been helpless, speechless, like your innards have melted, where you feel as if you're like, this is where I belong. Is there a place like that for you on the planet?
This is a place I belong. I'll give you an example. We've done we were lucky to do a couple of trips to Europe as a family.
Mhm.
Um, and well, I have fond memories of going. We went to Europe in 2016. My wife and daughter and I went to France and Germany and Italy. And my wife and I had been to Italy. We went to Italy in our honeymoon, started in Venice and worked our way to Rome. So, and then I guess it was almost a year ago now, we were in Greece for a
Mhm.
while,
Mhm.
and went to Athens and went to Santorini, and so I when I think of the views at Santorini, being on the island and looking out on the water, and you're thinking like you're never going to see anything else like this anywhere else in the world. That certainly comes to mind. I think um, I liked Italy too. I liked Italy a lot. I liked going there. I liked being in Venice. I liked being in Rome. But I liked the kind of style and the attitude, as well as the fact that you're any of those places too. But the fact that you're surrounded kind of by history. You walk out and you see people kind of living their regular lives and surrounded by these amazing, turn a corner, there's another monument, go
Right.
there's another, historical site that dates back hundreds of thousands of years. So
Right.
that kind of idea has always appealed to me. Like you're living within those kinds of things. You kind of adapt to that world, the old world as it's been, but the new world is kind of the people who are making their living doing their own thing now. So
Right.
I really like that idea. And so those kinds of places I think really appeal to me. So they probably go with, and Greece, being in Athens and was one, it was hot, but but then going to the islands and seeing, getting a glimpse of that and seeing just how fantastic and beautiful it is. Like, it's hard to, you know, you walk along the caldera in Santorini, and it's amazing. Like, it's just, like I said, you can't replicate that view anywhere.
No, it's mythical, and I hear exactly what you're saying. Like my mom is from Rhodes, which is an island east of Santorini,
Ah, okay.
and every time I land there, I kiss the tarmac. I can't help it.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
feel like that this is where I belong.
yeah,
It's far more powerful than landing in Scarborough, for example, or Richmond Hill.
yeah, for sure. I can't imagine why. Yeah,
But I always love hearing that answer because there's so many places in the world that we haven't discovered collectively and
yeah,
individually,
yeah.
and the answers always surprise me because it's all based on your experience, and it's very subjective and it's very personal.
Hmm.
And so to ask that and to get that from you is very appreciative. So I hear you. Those places are amazing, and the fact that people are still living within castles
Yeah,
with their shop around the corner and their living room over here,
yeah,
in many places around the world, that's magical, man.
yeah,
You
and
can't
yeah.
replicate that at all.
And I think first when I went to for CA several years ago, I went to Kenya with, and I only had about a week there, but it was a quick trip. I'd never been into anywhere in Africa before, and I was fortunate to be with a couple of guys who were photographer. They came from Cape Town, and they met me there, and we went on a game drive just to get some photos of some of the animals on the in the national park we were in. But it was like we got out. I remember getting out of the Jeep for a second, and it was, of course, it was like midday, it was blazing hot, but it was like, I remember thinking, I'm standing here in Africa. This is Africa. And you'd never been to a place that was so completely different than what I'd grown up with. So that was pretty cool too. I'd love to be able to go back there.
That sounds terrible.
It was awful. It was terrible. Truly,
Paul
truly.
Ferriss, thank you so much for taking the time today, my friend. I
No
hope
problem.
that you and your family continue to stay safe, continue to stay healthy, and conversations in person down the road, I hope.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate this. It was fun.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care.
Ciao.